Welcome, dear traveler. Tonight, we leave behind the noise of the modern world and step onto one of the oldest roads ever woven across the face of the earth. Before you settle in, perhaps adjust your pillow, lower the lights, and allow yourself to drift into a slower rhythm. There is nowhere to hurry now. The road ahead has waited for centuries, and it can certainly wait a little longer for us. Our story begins not with an emperor, nor with a famous battle, but with a quiet evening somewhere between mountains and desert. The sun hangs low over the horizon, bathing the endless landscape in shades of amber and gold. A long line of camels moves patiently across the dust, each one carrying bundles of silk, fragrant spices, carved jade, fine porcelain, rolls of wool, delicate paper, and countless treasures gathered from lands so distant that many travelers will never see them with their own eyes. The air is cool now. Daytime heat is fading, replaced by a gentle breeze that brushes against weathered faces and tired hands. Bells hanging from camel harnesses produce a slow, peaceful rhythm, almost like the ticking of an ancient clock. Every step echoes softly across the empty plain. This road is known today as the Silk Road, although in truth it was never just one road. Instead, it was an enormous web of paths stretching for thousands of miles, connecting east and west through deserts, valleys, forests, rivers, and towering mountain passes. Merchants from China might spend months carrying silk toward Central Asia, while traders from Persia traveled eastward with carpets, precious metals, and stories from lands beyond the setting sun. Few people ever completed the entire journey. Most traveled only small portions before returning home. Goods changed hands again and again. Silk woven in one city might pass through 20 different markets before finally reaching a wealthy household thousands of miles away. By the time a single bolt of silk arrived in Europe, countless hands had touched it. Yet our story is not really about silk, nor is it about kings, armies, or famous explorers. Tonight, we are searching for something much quieter. We are searching for the forgotten inns. Long before hotels lined busy highways, before railway stations welcomed passengers, and centuries before airplanes crossed continents in mere hours, travelers depended upon remarkable places known as caravanserais. These great roadside inns were scattered across the Silk Road like small islands of warmth, surrounded by vast oceans of wilderness. Without them, many journeys would simply have been impossible. Imagine walking across endless desert for days beneath a blazing sun. Your water grows scarce, your clothes become heavy with dust. Every horizon looks exactly the last. Then, just as evening begins to settle, a square stone building appears in the distance. At first, it seems almost like a mirage. But as you come closer, its walls become clearer. Lanterns begin glowing above a large wooden gate. Smoke rises peacefully into the evening sky. Somewhere beyond those thick walls, someone is preparing supper. You have arrived. For generations, this simple sight meant safety. The caravanserai stood as one of history's greatest inventions, not because it was grand or luxurious, but because it offered something every traveler desperately needed: shelter, water, food, rest, security, and perhaps, after weeks of silence across lonely roads, the comforting sound of another human voice. Most caravanserais were built with enormous walls surrounding a central courtyard. Their design was practical rather than beautiful, although many possessed an understated elegance shaped by skilled craftsmen. The heavy entrance gate served two purposes. During the day, it welcomed arriving caravans. At night,
It protected everyone inside. Once darkness settled across the desert, the gates were closed until sunrise. Outside, the wilderness belonged to wild animals, harsh weather, and occasionally dangerous bandits. Inside, however, lantern light flickered across stone walls while travelers prepared for another peaceful night. As our caravan approaches one such inn, the first thing we notice is not the building itself. It is the silence. Not complete silence, of course, rather the gentle sounds of evening. Camels groan softly as they kneel to rest. Leather saddles creak. A horse stamps its hoof against packed earth. Somewhere nearby, water splashes into a wooden bucket. From an open kitchen drifts the comforting aroma of fresh bread, onions, herbs, and slowly simmering stew. The scent alone lifts weary spirits. Our caravan has been traveling for nearly 12 days. Among its travelers are experienced merchants, young apprentices, cooks, camel drivers, translators, guards, religious pilgrims, and a physician carrying bundles of dried medicinal herbs wrapped carefully inside cloth. Each person carries different hopes. Some seek fortune. Some seek knowledge. Others simply hope to return home before winter arrives. Travel along the Silk Road demanded remarkable patience. A journey that today might take only hours once required many months. Sandstorms could delay entire caravans for days. Flooded rivers forced travelers to wait until waters receded. Snow closed mountain passes without warning. Nobody expected speed. Instead, survival depended on preparation. That is why caravanserais appeared roughly every 20 to 30 miles, a comfortable day's journey for heavily loaded camels. As evening settled, travelers rarely continued onward. Night belonged to rest. Inside the courtyard, each arriving caravan followed an almost familiar routine practiced countless times across centuries. First came the animals. Camels were carefully unloaded before receiving water and feed. Their burdens had been immense. Some carried hundreds of pounds across harsh landscapes where food and water were often scarce. Only after every animal had been cared for did many merchants think about themselves. Stable hands moved calmly among the animals with practiced confidence. They checked hooves, examined harnesses, brushed away dust, and spoke softly to creatures they understood almost as well as family members. Many caravan leaders believed healthy camels were worth more than gold. Without them, trade simply stopped. Nearby, travelers unrolled blankets inside small guest rooms built along the courtyard walls. These rooms were simple: stone floors, thick walls, wooden doors, sometimes a small window. Nothing luxurious, yet after days beneath open skies, even the humblest room felt wonderfully welcoming. One elderly merchant smiles quietly as he places a small oil lamp beside his bedroll. He has stayed in dozens of caravanserais over 40 years of travel. Each one is different, yet each somehow feels familiar. Outside his doorway, voices from many languages begin blending together: Persian, Sogdian, Arabic, Chinese, Turkic dialects, occasionally Greek, sometimes languages that historians today can barely reconstruct. Few people understand every conversation, yet smiles, shared meals, and gestures often prove enough. For thousands of years, these forgotten inns became places where strangers briefly became neighbors before morning carried them towards different horizons. And as the stars slowly awaken above the desert sky, our journey is only just beginning.
The first stars have now appeared above the desert, scattered across the darkening sky like tiny lanterns hung by invisible hands. The day's warmth slowly slips away, replaced by cool evening air that drifts gently through the open courtyard of the caravanserai.
Outside the massive stone walls stretches an endless wilderness, silent except for the whisper of wind moving over sand and scattered shrubs. Inside, however, life continues at an unhurried pace. There is no rush here. There are no clocks marking the hours, no schedules demanding attention, and no one checking how quickly another task can be completed. Instead, the evening unfolds exactly as it has for hundreds of years. At the center of it all stands the innkeeper. History rarely remembers people like him. His name is absent from royal records. No grand monuments celebrate his life, and no famous artist paints his portrait. Yet, without men and women like him, countless merchants, pilgrims, scholars, and explorers might never have completed their journeys across Asia. The innkeeper wakes before sunrise every morning, not because someone tells him to, but because the road itself never truly sleeps. Some caravans arrive late at night, others appear just before dawn. Some stay only until first light, others remain for several days while animals recover from long stretches of difficult travel. Every day brings different faces. Every evening tells a different story. As dawn breaks, the innkeeper walks slowly through the courtyard, inspecting every corner of the building. He checks the great wooden gate first. Heavy iron hinges must remain strong enough to withstand years of opening and closing. Sand works its way into every crack, and desert winds show little mercy to wood or metal. Next come the wells. Water is more valuable than almost anything else. A caravanserai without fresh water is little more than an empty shell. Workers lower leather buckets deep into the cool darkness below. They draw water carefully, making certain there will be enough for travelers, cooks, horses, camels, and the many chores that fill each day. Some wells have served travelers for generations. Children drink from the same stone basin where their grandparents once rested during journeys long forgotten. Nearby, the kitchen slowly awakens. Before the first rays of sunlight reach the courtyard, cooks are already kneading dough. Large clay ovens, still warm from the previous evening, begin glowing once more. The scent of baking bread soon drifts through the cool morning air. Simple meals sustain life along the Silk Road. Fresh bread, warm lentil soup, rice when available, dates, nuts, goat cheese. On fortunate days, perhaps roasted lamb, flavored with herbs gathered from nearby hills. Tea becomes almost a ceremony. Water is heated slowly inside blackened kettles suspended over glowing coals. Leaves carried from distant mountains release delicate aromas into the steam. Guests cradle warm cups between tired hands while exchanging quiet conversations that cross cultures and languages. Not every traveler arrives wealthy. Some carry chests overflowing with precious silk. Others possess little more than a blanket, a walking staff, and enough coins to purchase one modest meal. The caravanserai welcomes them all. Payment varies greatly. Some offer silver coins stamped with unfamiliar rulers. Others exchange spices, dried fruit, wool, leather goods, and practical labor. A skilled blacksmith may repair broken tools in exchange for lodging. A physician may treat an injured camel instead of paying with money. A storyteller might entertain guests around the evening fire, while the innkeeper quietly decides that such company is worth the cost of supper. Trade does not always happen in marketplaces. Sometimes it happens through kindness. As the sun climbs higher, our travelers begin preparing for another day on the road. Some tighten saddle straps. Others carefully wrap fragile porcelain in layers of wool. Camel drivers inspect every rope securing heavy cargo. Nothing can be left to chance. One loose knot could mean losing valuable goods many miles from the nearest settlement. The innkeeper watches all this with experienced eyes. He notices everything. A limping horse, a cracked water skin, an exhausted child, a merchant pretending not to worry about approaching winter. Years spent observing travelers have taught him that every caravan tells its own story before anyone speaks a single word. Some arrive laughing, others arrive in complete silence. A few bear fresh scars from encounters with thieves or harsh weather. Many carry news. In an age before newspapers, telegraphs, or radios, caravanserais become places where information travels almost as quickly as silk itself. A traveler arriving from the east may report that mountain passes remained blocked by heavy snow. Someone from Persia speaks of unusually rich harvests. A merchant from Samarkand describes the opening of a new market. Another quietly mentions unrest near a distant border. No one can instantly verify these reports. Still, everyone listens. Knowledge is valuable. Sometimes it saves lives. Sometimes it protects fortunes. And sometimes it simply satisfies human curiosity about lands beyond the horizon. By late afternoon, shadows begin growing longer across the courtyard. The workers know what that means. Another caravan will likely appear before sunset. Sure enough, one of the young stable hands climbs a small watchtower built into the outer wall. He shades his eyes against the lowering sun. At first, he sees nothing. Then, far away, a faint cloud of dust begins rising above the plain. He smiles. Visitors. The innkeeper does not panic. He has repeated this routine thousands of times. Workers prepare fresh water. Stable doors are opened. Cooking fires receive additional wood. Extra blankets are brought from storage. Within an hour, the sound of distant camel bells drifts across the desert once again. Slow, steady, comfortingly familiar. The arriving caravan is smaller than the previous one. Only 15 camels, several horses, 2 covered wagons, a handful of guards riding quietly along the edges. Their journey has clearly been difficult. Dust covers every piece of clothing. Faces appear weathered by sun and wind. Yet as the great wooden gate slowly swings inward, expressions soften. The hardest part of the day is over. Children climb down from wagons, stretching tired legs. Older travelers breathe deeply, grateful for solid walls after another day beneath endless skies. One elderly woman gently touches the stone beside the entrance as she walks inside. Perhaps she has visited this very inn decades before. Perhaps it simply reminds her that tonight she will sleep safely. Within minutes, the courtyard comes alive again. Camels kneel patiently while loads are removed. Water splashes into troughs. Laughter mixes with unfamiliar languages. Fresh bread disappears as quickly as it leaves the ovens. Someone begins quietly playing a simple wooden flute near the well. Its soft melody floats through the evening air, never demanding attention, merely accompanying the peaceful rhythm of the inn. As darkness settles completely, lanterns hanging from wooden beams cast warm circles of golden light across the courtyard stones. Beyond the walls, the vast desert becomes invisible. Only the stars remain. Inside, travelers gather around low tables, sharing food with strangers who may become trusted friends before sunrise. Some exchange stories of distant kingdoms. Others simply enjoy the rare comfort of sitting still after another long day on the road. The innkeeper walks one final round through his caravanserai. He checks that every date is secured, every lantern burns safely, every guest has found a place to sleep. Only then does he allow himself a quiet cup of tea beneath the stars. Tomorrow, many of these travelers will disappear over the horizon. New faces will arrive. The road will continue, as it always has. And somewhere beyond the darkness, another forgotten story is already making its way towards these welcoming walls.
The great wooden gates have now been closed for the night.
With a deep, steady groan, the heavy beams slide into place, sealing the caravanserai from the darkness beyond its walls. Outside, the Silk Road stretches silently beneath the moonlight, disappearing into deserts, mountains, and distant kingdoms. The endless road will still be there tomorrow. Tonight, however, it is time to rest. Inside the courtyard, everything feels remarkably different. Only a short while ago, the inn buzzed with the gentle activity of arriving caravans. Camels were being unloaded, horses watered, merchants greeting old friends, and cooks preparing the evening meal. Now, as the night deepens, those lively sounds soften into something far more peaceful. A lantern flickers beside the main gate. Another glows beneath the covered walkway. Tiny pools of golden light spread across the worn stone floor, leaving the corners wrapped in comforting shadows. Above, the sky is breathtaking. Far from modern cities and electric lights, the heavens appear almost impossibly clear. Thousands upon thousands of stars stretch from one horizon to the other. The pale band of the Milky Way arches across the sky like a river of silver dust. Many travelers pause for a moment before going to bed. Some have crossed these deserts dozens of times, yet they never tire of looking upwards. For others, this may be the first time they have witnessed such a magnificent night sky. The stars become more than simple decorations. They are companions, guides, silent witnesses to every journey. Long before maps became common, experienced caravan leaders relied upon the heavens to find their way. During clear nights, familiar constellations helped them maintain direction across landscapes where few landmarks existed. One elderly guide quietly points toward the northern sky. Beside him stands a young apprentice, barely old enough to grow a beard. "There," the old man whispers, "the stars never hurry." The apprentice looks upward. At first, all he sees are countless sparkling lights. But slowly, under his teacher's patient guidance, individual patterns begin to emerge. Each constellation carries memories passed from one generation to the next. Not every culture gives them the same names. Chinese astronomers see different figures than Persian travelers. Arab scholars describe different stories than merchants from distant Europe. Yet everyone shares the same sky. Perhaps that is one of the Silk Road's greatest lessons. Different people can view the same world with different traditions while still walking the same road together. Near the center of the courtyard, supper has begun. There are no grand feasts tonight. Instead, simple wooden bowls are filled with steaming lentil stew. Fresh bread, still warm from the clay oven, is passed from hand to hand. Small dishes of olives, dried figs, roasted chickpeas, walnuts, and soft goat cheese appear on woven mats spread across the ground. The meal is humble, but after many days of travel, it tastes wonderful. One merchant from Persia carefully pours fragrant tea into tiny cups. Across from him sits a trader from Western China. Neither speaks the other's language very well. Still, they smile politely. A few shared words, a few gestures. Sometimes that is enough. Trade has always depended on trust more than perfect conversation. Nearby, two camel drivers compare the condition of their animals. One proudly explains that his oldest camel has crossed the Taklamakan Desert nearly 20 times. The other laughs gently. "My youngest still complains after every hill." Around them, quiet laughter spreads. Camels may seem stubborn to those unfamiliar with them, but experienced travelers understand their remarkable importance. A healthy camel can carry heavy loads for weeks across dry landscapes where horses struggle to survive. Its broad feet sink less deeply into loose sand. Its thick eyelashes protect sensitive eyes from blowing dust.
Its body stores energy with extraordinary efficiency. Without camels, much of the Silk Road would have remained nearly impossible to cross. The animals themselves now rest peacefully. Some chew slowly, enjoying bundles of hay. Others kneel comfortably upon the packed earth, occasionally lifting their heads to observe the courtyard before settling once more. Stable boys move quietly among them, carrying buckets of water. They know each animal has its own personality. Some enjoy gentle scratches behind the ears. Others prefer to be left alone after long days of work. Even the camels seem grateful for the shelter. Outside these walls, wolves sometimes wander beneath the moon. Sandstorms may arrive without warning. Cold desert nights can surprise travelers who remember only the scorching heat of midday. Within the caravanserai, however, thick stone walls soften the wind and create a welcome sense of security. As the evening grows later, stories begin to replace business. This is one of the caravanserai's oldest traditions. People have always loved stories. A merchant describes seeing enormous cities where rivers are crowded with boats carrying silk and porcelain. A pilgrim speaks quietly of peaceful temples hidden among distant mountains. An old soldier recalls crossing snowy passes so high that breathing became difficult. A spice trader smiles as he remembers a market where the air smelled entirely of cinnamon, cloves, pepper, and saffron. Each tale travels farther than its storyteller ever could. Some stories are perfectly true. Others become slightly larger each time they are told. A fish grows longer. A mountain becomes steeper. A storm becomes fiercer. No one minds very much. After all, a pleasant evening often leaves room for a little imagination. Sitting quietly near one of the lanterns is a young scribe. Unlike many merchants, he carries little cargo. Instead, his greatest treasure is a small wooden box filled with ink, brushes, parchment, and folded sheets of paper. Throughout the evening, he carefully records names, prices, weather conditions, and directions shared by experienced travelers. His notes may seem ordinary today, yet centuries later, historians will treasure documents like these. They reveal not only where people traveled, but how they lived, what they ate, what they feared, what made them laugh, and what they hoped to find beyond the next horizon. Not every evening passes so peacefully. Sometimes exhausted travelers arrive just before the gates close. Sometimes an injured animal requires immediate care. Occasionally, arguments break out over damaged goods or misunderstood agreements. Yet experienced innkeepers know how to calm troubled tempers. A warm meal, a safe place to sleep, a little patience. These simple things solve more problems than many people realize. As midnight approaches, conversations gradually fade. One by one, travelers excuse themselves and return to their small rooms surrounding the courtyard. Oil lamps burn lower. Cooking fires shrink into glowing embers. Only the occasional murmur of resting camels breaks the silence. A watchman begins his nightly rounds. Carrying a lantern and a long wooden staff, he walks slowly along the inside of the walls. His footsteps echo softly across the stone. Every hour he pauses to listen, not for conversation, not for music, but for anything unusual. A loose gate, an anxious horse, a stranger outside the walls. Most nights he hears only the whisper of the desert wind, and that is exactly how he prefers it. The moon now hangs high above the caravanserai. Its gentle light spills across rooftops, illuminating the courtyard in pale silver. The lanterns below seem almost like tiny stars that have drifted down from the heavens. Inside one modest room, a merchant unfolds a letter from home. The paper has traveled almost as far as he has. Its edges are worn from being opened many times. Although he knows every word by heart, he reads it once again before sleeping. Another traveler quietly whispers an evening prayer. Nearby, a child curls beneath a wool blanket while listening to the distant breathing of camels outside. The familiar sounds make the unfamiliar place feel strangely comforting. Soon, nearly everyone is asleep. Tomorrow's journey will begin before sunrise. The road ahead remains long. New deserts await, new mountains, new cities, and somewhere beyond the eastern horizon, another forgotten caravanserai is preparing its lanterns for travelers who have not yet appeared. For the Silk Road never truly ends. It simply continues, one peaceful night and one welcoming inn at a time.
Long before the first hint of sunrise reaches the distant horizon, the caravanserai begins to awaken. The stars still shimmer above the desert, and the moon has not yet disappeared. But those who spend their lives upon the Silk Road know that the coolest hours of the day are often the most valuable. Before the sun transforms the landscape into a sea of shimmering heat, there is work to be done, animals to prepare, and many miles to travel. The first sound is almost always the same, not the voices of merchants, not the footsteps of travelers, but the quiet crackling of a cooking fire. In the kitchen, one of the oldest workers in the caravanserai gently stirs glowing coals back to life. With practiced hands, he adds dry wood gathered days before. Thin streams of smoke curl upward through a hole in the roof, carrying with them the familiar scent of cedar and desert shrubs. Soon another cook arrives, then another. Without speaking very much, they begin their morning routine. Large bowls of flour are mixed with cool well water. Fresh dough is kneaded slowly, folded again and again until smooth and elastic. Before long, round loaves are pressed against the hot inner walls of a clay oven where they bake quickly, filling the courtyard with the comforting aroma of fresh bread. For many travelers, that smell becomes one of their happiest memories. Years later, they may forget the names of certain villages or the faces of passing strangers, but they will remember waking to warm bread beneath the stone walls of a caravanserai somewhere along the Silk Road. Outside, the stable yard is already busy. The camels rise one by one. Watching a camel stand is almost a lesson in patience. First, the animal lifts its back legs, then slowly raises its front, unfolding itself until it towers above the people beside it. Heavy saddles wait nearby, carefully arranged exactly where they were placed the previous evening. The camel drivers waste no movement. Every rope is inspected, every knot is tightened, every leather strap is checked for wear. A journey across the Silk Road leaves very little room for carelessness. One broken harness, many miles into the desert, can delay an entire caravan. One forgotten waterskin may place dozens of lives at risk. The experienced drivers understand this well. Many have followed these routes since childhood. Some learned from their fathers, others from older brothers or uncles. Knowledge along the Silk Road often travels through families, just as precious goods do. Near the well, several horses stamp gently against the cool ground, while stable hands brush dust from their coats. Unlike camels, horses require more frequent water and richer food. They are faster, but less suited for the harshest deserts. Many wealthy merchants choose to ride horses while their goods travel upon camels behind them. Together, the two animals form the perfect partnership. One offers speed, the other endurance. As dawn slowly approaches, the eastern horizon begins changing color. Deep blue fades into violet, violet softens into pale rose. Then, almost without anyone noticing the exact moment, the first golden light
touches the distant mountains. The caravanserai seems to glow, its weathered stone walls, worn smooth by centuries of wind and sand, catch the morning sunlight like old honey. The travelers pause for only a moment. Even those who witness hundreds of sunrises never become completely accustomed to their quiet beauty. One elderly merchant smiles softly. "The road always looks kinder in the morning," he says. No one argues. Breakfast is simple: warm bread fresh from the oven, soft goat cheese wrapped in cloth, a handful of dates, sometimes dried apricots, sometimes almonds or walnuts carried from distant valleys. Strong teas poured into small cups. Its warmth spreads through tired hands before the first sip is even taken. Conversations remain gentle. Unlike the lively evenings, mornings are quieter. People save their energy for the road ahead. Some review maps drawn carefully on parchment. Others count their coins. A young apprentice carefully copies the day's route onto a wax tablet, listening closely as an older guide explains which wells still contain water and which should be avoided. These conversations are invaluable. Road conditions change constantly. A bridge standing safely one month may be swept away after heavy rain. A peaceful valley may become dangerous if bandits have been seen nearby. Information shared over breakfast can sometimes determine whether a journey succeeds or fails. Across the courtyard, merchants begin inspecting their cargo. Rolls of brilliant silk are carefully wrapped inside waterproof coverings. Boxes of delicate porcelain are padded with wool and straw. Bundles of cinnamon, pepper, cloves, and saffron release faint fragrances into the cool morning air. Nearby lie bars of silver, ivory carvings, beautiful carpets rolled tightly against dust, glassware from distant workshops, fine paper, lacquered boxes, medicinal herbs gathered from remote mountain slopes. The Silk Road is often remembered because of silk, yet silk is only one small part of an astonishing network of trade. Ideas travel these roads. Religions travel them. Languages, music, art, even recipes pass quietly from one civilization to another. Some historians have described the Silk Road as the world's first great exchange of cultures. Standing in this peaceful courtyard, that idea feels wonderfully true. Near the entrance gate, the innkeeper quietly greets each departing caravan. He does not ask unnecessary questions. Instead, he offers practical advice. Take the northern path today. The southern well is nearly dry. A storm crossed the eastern hills yesterday. His knowledge comes not from books, but from listening. Every arriving traveler leaves behind pieces of information. The innkeeper simply gathers them together, like someone collecting tiny stones, until a clear picture slowly forms. At last, everything is ready. The massive wooden gate begins to open. Its ancient hinges groan softly. Cool morning air drifts into the courtyard. Beyond the entrance stretches the endless road once again. One by one, the camels step forward. Heavy loads sway gently upon their backs. The bells hanging from their harnesses begin their familiar rhythm. Clink, clink, clink. The sound grows quieter as the caravan moves farther away. Dust rises beneath hundreds of careful footsteps. Soon, the travelers become little more than silhouettes against the growing light. The innkeeper watches until they disappear beyond the horizon. Then he turns around. His work is not finished. It has barely begun. The empty guest rooms must be swept, fresh water drawn, the ovens prepared once again, broken harnesses repaired, blankets shaken from dust. By evening, another caravan will almost certainly arrive. Perhaps they will come from Samarkand, perhaps from Kashgar, perhaps from Persia or the distant cities of China. The innkeeper never knows, and that uncertainty is part of the quiet beauty of his life. Every day begins with an empty courtyard. Every evening fills it with strangers. For a single night, people from opposite ends of the known world eat together, rest beneath the same stars, and continue onward at sunrise. Most never meet again, yet each leaves behind something invisible, a story, a memory, a piece of knowledge, a simple act of kindness. Centuries later, the buildings may crumble, their wooden gates may disappear, and drifting sand may slowly cover the roads that once echoed with countless footsteps. But mornings like this, filled with fresh bread, gentle conversations, patient camels, and the hopeful promise of another day's journey, remain quietly alive in the pages of history.
The morning caravan has now disappeared beyond the horizon. Only a faint ribbon of dust lingers in the distance before slowly dissolving into the clear blue sky. Once again, the caravanserai grows quiet. The courtyard, so full of voices only moments ago, now echoes with little more than the flutter of pigeons perched along the stone walls and the soft splash of water being drawn from the well. To a visitor, the inn might seem almost empty, but the Silk Road is never truly empty. Some travelers have only just arrived after journeying through the cool hours of the night. Others remain behind to care for a sick camel, repair a damaged wagon, or simply recover their strength before facing another long stretch of wilderness. Every traveler has a reason for being here, and every traveler carries something valuable. When people imagine the Silk Road today, they often picture magnificent bolts of shimmering silk, glittering jewels, or caravans overflowing with gold. Those treasures certainly existed, but they represented only a small part of what moved along these ancient roads. Far more common were practical things: bundles of wool, leather hides, salt, tea, rice, copper tools, iron nails, dried fruit, paper, medicinal herbs, glass bottles. Even ordinary wooden bowls found their way from one town to another. The Silk Road was less like a single luxury marketplace and more like the heartbeat of an entire continent. Every village depended on something that came from somewhere else. A family living in the mountains might trade fine wool for grain grown in fertile river valleys. A potter exchanged beautiful ceramic bowls for timber cut from distant forests. A blacksmith forged strong horseshoes using iron mined hundreds of miles away. No one produced everything they needed. Trade connected lives that would otherwise never have crossed. In one shaded corner of the caravanserai sits an elderly merchant named Farid. His beard has turned completely white, and deep lines surround his eyes, carved there by decades beneath the desert sun. Farid has traveled these roads for nearly 40 years. He no longer remembers how many caravans he has joined. Perhaps 100, perhaps 200. The number no longer matters. What matters are the memories. As he slowly sips warm tea from a small clay cup, a young apprentice settles beside him. The boy cannot be more than 16 years old. His eyes shine with curiosity. He has completed only one journey beyond his hometown, and everything still feels wonderfully new. "Master Farid," he asks quietly,
"What is the most valuable thing you have ever carried?" The old merchant smiles. Many people expect his answer to be silk or jade, perhaps gold. Instead, he gently shakes his head. "The most valuable cargo," he replies, "is trust." The apprentice looks puzzled. Farid notices. When a stranger places his fortune in your care, he is trusting that you will protect it. When another merchant lends you money, he trusts your word. When a caravan follows its guide across a desert, everyone trusts that he knows where water can be found. He pauses for another sip of tea. Without trust, silk is only cloth. The young apprentice thinks carefully about those words. Around them, life continues peacefully. A tailor carefully stitches a torn saddlebag. Nearby, two craftsmen repair a broken wagon wheel using simple wooden tools that have changed very little over centuries. Every hammer strike echoes gently through the courtyard. Not far away, a physician examines one of the caravan's camels. The animal has developed a sore under its saddle after weeks of carrying heavy loads. The physician cleans the wound with warm water mixed with herbs before applying a soft cloth bandage. The camel blinks slowly, accepting the treatment with remarkable patience. Experienced travelers understand an important truth. Healthy animals mean safe journeys. They care for them with almost the same attention they give one another. By midday, the desert sun shines brilliantly overhead. The thick stone walls of the caravanserai provide welcome shade, keeping the inner courtyard noticeably cooler than the open landscape beyond. Travel during the hottest hours is avoided whenever possible. Instead, merchants rest. Some stretch out beneath woven awnings. Others write letters that may not reach their families for many months. A few simply close their eyes and enjoy the rare luxury of doing absolutely nothing. The road teaches patience. There is little value in fighting against the rhythm of nature. The sun rises, the sun sets, the seasons change. The caravan moves when conditions allow, not before, not after. Among the resting travelers is a woman named Laleh. She has spent years buying fine carpets from weaving villages in Persia before selling them in cities hundreds of miles away. Each carpet tells a story. Some contain patterns representing flowing rivers. Others depict gardens, stars, flowers, or geometric designs passed from generation to generation. Laleh knows nearly every pattern by heart. She can often identify the village where a carpet was woven simply by studying its colors and knots.
The setting sun slowly slips behind distant hills, painting the desert with gentle shades of amber, rose, and deep gold. Long shadows stretch across the courtyard of the Caravanserai, while the day's warmth gradually fades into the cool embrace of evening. One by one, lanterns are lit along the stone walls, their soft glow reflecting in the polished brass kettles hanging above small cooking fires. For travelers of the Silk Road, this is often the most peaceful hour of the day. The walking is finished. The counting of goods has ended. The camels have been unloaded. The horses have been brushed and watered. For a little while, there is nowhere else to be. Only here. Only now. The courtyard slowly fills with the comforting sounds of another shared evening. Wood crackles inside the ovens. Clay bowls are carefully stacked beside long wooden tables. The smell of freshly baked bread drifts through the air, mixing with fragrant steam rising from kettles filled with tea. It is a simple meal, yet to those who have spent days crossing lonely deserts or winding mountain trails, it feels almost luxurious. Across much of the Silk Road, hospitality is not considered a luxury, it is a responsibility. Many cultures along these ancient routes believe that a traveler deserves kindness regardless of where they come from or what language they speak. No one knows when they themselves may become the stranger seeking shelter at another distant inn. Perhaps that understanding makes generosity easier. The innkeeper's wife moves quietly through the courtyard carrying a basket lined with fresh linen. Inside are warm, round loaves of bread, their golden crusts still crackling softly from the heat of the oven. She places them gently upon each table before returning for more. She has repeated this simple task thousands of times. Even so, she never rushes. There is dignity in ordinary work. Nearby, an elderly baker wipes flour from his hands before checking another batch of bread. His family has baked in caravanserais for 3 generations. His grandfather once told him that travelers rarely remember the exact shape of a building. They may forget the color of its walls. They may even forget the faces of those who welcomed them. But they almost always remember how a place made them feel. A warm loaf of bread on a cold evening has a way of staying in the heart long after the journey ends. As guests gather for supper, there is no strict seating arrangement. A wealthy silk merchant may find himself beside a shepherd. A scholar may share a meal with a camel driver. A pilgrim may sit beside an experienced guard who has crossed dangerous mountain passes more times than he can count. For one evening, titles matter very little. Everyone is simply a traveler. Wooden bowls of lentil stew are passed from hand to hand. The soup is thick with onions, carrots, herbs, and slow-cooked beans. It is nourishing rather than extravagant. Beside it sit dishes of olives, dried apricots, roasted chickpeas, almonds, and soft white cheese wrapped carefully in cloth to keep it cool. The tea arrives last, always the tea. Large brass kettles release gentle clouds of fragrant steam as they are carried across the courtyard. Some contain green tea brought from the eastern provinces. Others hold black tea mixed with local herbs. Occasionally, wealthy caravans contribute precious spices such as cardamom or cinnamon, filling the evening air with warm and comforting aromas. The tea is poured slowly into small cups without handles. Guests cradle the cups between their hands, warming their fingers before taking the first careful sip. There is something wonderfully unhurried about tea along the Silk Road. No one drinks it while standing. No one gulps it down before rushing away. Tea asks people to pause, to breathe, to listen. Perhaps that is why so many important conversations begin over a simple cup. At one table, 2 merchants quietly negotiate the price of Persian carpets. Neither raises his voice. They smile often. Each knows that business conducted with patience usually lasts longer than business completed in haste. Nearby, a physician explains the healing properties of dried herbs collected from mountain valleys. A young mother listens carefully, hoping to remember every detail. Across the courtyard, several children have invented a game using smooth stones gathered near a river weeks earlier. They laugh softly as they arrange them into patterns upon the ground. Their laughter drifts gently through the evening air. It reminds everyone that even along one of history's greatest trade routes, ordinary family life continues. Not every traveler journeys for profit. Some travel because they must. One elderly pilgrim sits quietly near the edge of the courtyard, eating slowly while watching the lanterns flicker against the stone walls. He has been walking for nearly 4 months. His destination is a sacred shrine many hundreds of miles away. He carries nearly nothing more than a walking stick, a blanket, and a small leather pouch containing dried fruit. A young merchant notices that the old man is alone. Without saying a word, he tears his own loaf of bread in half and places one piece beside the pilgrim. The old man smiles. No speech is necessary. Acts of kindness often require no translation. As darkness deepens, music begins to appear almost by accident. A traveler removes a small reed flute from his bag. Another carries a stringed instrument polished smooth by years of careful use. Neither intends to give a performance. Instead, they simply play quietly for their own enjoyment. The melodies are gentle, unhurried. They blend naturally with the crackling fires and the occasional low call of resting camels. Some guests close their eyes while listening. Others continue talking in hushed voices. The music belongs to everyone. It asks for nothing. The innkeeper slowly walks through the courtyard, making sure every guest has enough food. He notices an empty cup before its owner does. He quietly refills it. He sees a blanket slipping from a sleeping child and gently pulls it back into place. Years of welcoming strangers have taught him that true hospitality often consists of the smallest gestures. Far beyond the walls, the desert grows colder. A cool wind sweeps across the open plains, carrying fine grains of sand that shimmer beneath the moonlight. Travelers who remain outside tonight will find little comfort. Inside the caravanserai, however, warmth lingers. The thick stone walls hold the heat of the day. The cooking fires continue burning softly. Lantern light dances gently across wooden beams, blackened by generations of smoke. For a few precious hours, the road no longer feels endless. One of the younger apprentices approaches the innkeeper with a question. "Master," he asks, "how do you remember so many people?" The old innkeeper smiles before answering. "I don't remember every face." He glances around the peaceful courtyard. "But I remember their stories." He points toward a merchant carefully repairing a leather saddle. "That man once crossed a frozen mountain during winter." Then towards a woman folding bright woven cloth. "She taught me how different villages create different dyes." Finally, he nods towards the elderly pilgrim. "And that traveler reminds me that some journeys cannot be measured in miles." The apprentice thinks quietly about those words. Perhaps stories are the true treasures of the Silk Road. Silk can wear out, coins can be spent, buildings may eventually crumble beneath wind and time, but stories have a remarkable way of surviving. They pass from parent to child, from teacher to student, from one weary traveler to another, sitting beside a warm fire on a peaceful evening. As the final cups of tea are emptied, conversations slowly begin to fade. Guests thank their hosts. Bowls are washed beside the well. The musicians carefully wrap their instruments in cloth. One by one, lanterns are dimmed, until only a few remain glowing beneath the clear desert sky. The caravanserai grows quiet once more. Tomorrow the road will call again. New miles will unfold beneath countless footsteps. New strangers will become companions for a single night. And somewhere beyond the dark horizon, another traveler is already searching for the comforting sight of lantern light shining from the welcoming walls of a forgotten Silk Road inn.
The first light of dawn arrives almost unnoticed. A faint silver glow appears along the eastern horizon, gently separating the earth from the sky. The stars, so brilliant only moments before, begin to fade. One by one, they disappear into the growing light, as if quietly stepping aside to welcome another day upon the Silk Road. Inside the caravanserai, the morning begins with familiar routines. Lanterns are extinguished. The cooking fires are stirred back to life.
Fresh water is drawn from the ancient well. The comforting scent of warm bread once again drifts through the cool desert air. Today's caravan has an especially long journey ahead. Its destination lies nearly 6 days away, across one of the most unforgiving landscapes in all of Central Asia. There are no villages waiting along today's path, no orchards, no rivers, only sand, stone, wind, and sky. The travelers know this well. No one speaks loudly as preparations begin. Instead, everyone moves with quiet purpose. The caravan leader, a patient man named Rashid, walks slowly among the camels, inspecting each one carefully. He has spent nearly 30 years crossing deserts. His beard has turned silver, and the sun has left deep lines upon his weathered face. Young travelers often ask him the secret to surviving such difficult journeys. His answer never changes. Respect the desert. Nothing more, nothing less. The desert does not hate travelers, neither does it welcome them. It simply exists, ancient and indifferent, asking only that those who cross it understand its nature. Those who become careless rarely receive a second chance. The camels kneel patiently while heavy loads are secured once again. Each bundle has its place. Silk is wrapped inside layers of protective cloth. Tea is stored where moisture cannot reach it. Glassware is surrounded by wool. Spices are packed tightly inside leather sacks, their rich aromas already escaping into the cool morning air. Nothing is arranged by accident. An experienced camel driver knows exactly how weight should be balanced. If one side becomes too heavy, the animal grows tired much sooner. A single mistake made before sunrise can become a serious problem many hours later. Nearby, water skins receive one final inspection. Every drop matters. Along this stretch of road, water is more precious than silver. A merchant may lose part of his cargo and recover his fortune another year. Lose water, however, and the journey itself may come to an end. The gates of the caravanserai slowly swing open. Beyond them lies the endless desert. The rising sun paints the distant dunes with soft shades of gold and pale orange. For a brief moment, the entire landscape seems almost peaceful, beautiful, gentle. Yet everyone here understands how quickly that beauty can change. The caravan begins moving. First comes Rashid upon his sturdy horse. Behind him walk the lead camels, each wearing small bronze bells around its neck. The bells produce a slow, steady rhythm. Not loud, not distracting, simply reassuring. Clink, clink, clink. The sound becomes the heartbeat of the journey. Soon the caravan settles into its natural pace. Nobody hurries. There is no reason to. The Silk Road rewards patience far more often than speed. Hour after hour, the travelers move together like a small floating island upon an endless sea of sand. The wind leaves delicate patterns across the dunes during the night. By afternoon, many of those patterns will have vanished. The desert is always changing. Even experienced guides know that no two crossings are ever exactly alike. As the morning continues, conversation becomes less frequent. Walking through deep sand requires quiet concentration. Many travelers simply listen. The bells, the soft footsteps of camels, the whisper of wind. Occasionally, the distant cry of a desert bird circles high overhead before fading into silence. One young apprentice asked Rashid how he always knows the correct direction. The guide smiled gently. He pointed toward a line of distant hills barely visible against the horizon. Then he gestured toward the position of the morning sun. Finally, he tapped his forehead. "The road," he said softly, "is remembered here." Maps certainly exist. Some are remarkably detailed. But many experienced caravan leaders carry the greatest map inside their memories. Every well, every rocky outcrop, every dangerous valley, every sheltered campsite. Years of careful observation become knowledge that cannot easily be written upon parchment. By midday, the desert begins revealing its true character. The cool morning air disappears. Heat rises from the ground in shimmering waves. Far ahead, pools of blue water seem to appear upon the horizon. The younger travelers look with excitement. Rashid quietly shakes his head. A mirage. As the caravan continues forward, the beautiful lake slowly disappears. There had never been any water at all. The desert has always enjoyed playing gentle tricks upon tired eyes. For this reason, inexperienced travelers are taught never to leave the caravan in search of distant water. Countless lives have been lost chasing reflections that vanish with every step. When the sun reaches its highest point, Rashid signals for a short rest. The caravan gathers beside a cluster of weathered rocks rising from the sand. Their shadows are small, but welcome. The camels kneel together. Water is shared carefully. Not too much, not too little, just enough. Several travelers remove their shoes and gently shake out the fine sand that has collected inside. Others stretch their tired legs. Nobody wastes energy. The desert teaches economy in every movement. One merchant quietly unwraps a small cloth bundle. Inside are dried figs, walnuts, and flatbread baked that very morning at the caravanserai. Simple food, yet beneath the burning sun, it tastes surprisingly satisfying. The apprentice notices that Rashid eats very little. "Are you not hungry?" he asked. The old guide smiled gently. "I have learned that the desert prefers those who travel lightly." The boy nods, though he does not fully understand. Perhaps one day he will. As the afternoon slowly unfolds, the landscape begins changing once again. Low dunes give way to hard-packed earth scattered with smooth stones polished by centuries of wind. Tiny desert flowers appear between the rocks, their blossoms astonishingly bright despite the harsh conditions. Life exists even here. A small fox watches the caravan from a distant ridge before disappearing silently behind the rocks. Several graceful gazelles bound across the plain, vanishing almost as quickly as they appeared. High above, an eagle circles patiently on rising currents of warm air. The Silk Road is far from empty. It simply asks visitors to look carefully. Late in the afternoon, the heat begins to soften. Long shadows stretch across the desert once more. Far ahead, barely visible against the fading light, Rashid notices something familiar. A square shape upon the horizon. Stone walls, a watchtower, perhaps even the faint glimmer of sunlight reflecting from a wooden gate. He smiles quietly. Another caravanserai. Another peaceful night. The younger travelers cannot yet see it, but the guide knows the road well enough to recognize hope long before it becomes visible to everyone else. The steady bells continue their gentle rhythm. Step by step, mile after mile, the caravan moves patiently towards the welcoming shelter waiting in the distance, where fresh water, warm bread, glowing lanterns, and new stories are already preparing to greet another group of weary travelers beneath the endless skies of the Silk Road.
As the sun begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, the distant shape that Rashid noticed earlier grows steadily clearer. What had first appeared to be nothing more than a dark line against the glowing desert now reveals itself as a sturdy stone caravanserai standing alone upon the open plain. To the weary travelers, it is a welcome sight. For nearly 12 hours they have walked beneath the vast sky, accompanied only by the steady rhythm of camel bells and the whispering wind. Their feet ache, their shoulders are stiff. Fine desert dust covers every piece of clothing they wear. Yet as they draw closer, their pace seems almost effortless. The promise of shelter has a remarkable way of restoring tired spirits. The caravanserai stands upon slightly higher ground, protected from seasonal floods that occasionally sweep across the desert after rare but powerful rains. Its thick walls, built from sun-dried bricks faced with carefully cut stone, have endured centuries of scorching summers, freezing winters, and relentless sandstorms. Time has left its mark. Some corners are softened by wind. A few stones bear the faint scratches of countless passing caravans. The great wooden gate has faded from rich brown to silvery gray beneath generations of desert sunlight. Yet, despite its age, the building remains strong. It has welcomed travelers for longer than anyone living can remember. Above the entrance, a weathered inscription has nearly disappeared. Only a few carefully carved letters remain visible. The young apprentice riding beside Rashid squints as he studies the faded stone. "What does it say?" he asks. The old guide smiles gently. No one is completely certain anymore. Some believe the inscription once offered a blessing for peaceful journeys. Others think it recorded the name of the ruler who ordered the inn's construction. Perhaps both stories are true. History often leaves behind mysteries instead of complete answers. As the caravan approaches, a watchman standing upon the small tower notices the rising cloud of dust. He lifts a polished brass horn and blows a single low note. Its deep sound rolls gently across the evening air. Within moments, the heavy gates begin to open. Not quickly. These ancient doors are enormous, built from thick cedar reinforced with iron bands. They move slowly, revealing a spacious courtyard beyond. Warm lantern light already flickers inside. Several workers stepped forward to greet the arriving travelers. No elaborate ceremony takes place. There is no formal announcement, only quiet smiles and familiar gestures. The workers know exactly what the travelers need. Water first, questions later. Camels are guided toward long stone troughs where fresh water has been prepared in advance. The animals lower their heads gratefully, drinking in slow, steady rhythm. Nearby, stable boys carefully loosen heavy saddles, allowing the camels' tired backs to rest after another demanding day. One young stable hand pauses beside an elderly camel whose face is streaked with gray. He gently strokes the animal's neck before offering it a handful of dried dates. The old camel accepts the treat with calm dignity. Perhaps they have met before. Many caravans follow similar routes year after year. It is entirely possible that both animal and stable hand recognize one another. Meanwhile, the travelers themselves gather near the central well. Cool water splashes into clay basins. Dust-covered hands are washed. Faces are refreshed. Some remove their sandals simply to enjoy the cool stone beneath their feet. After hours of walking across burning sand, even such a simple sensation feels wonderfully comforting. The innkeeper soon appears. Unlike the previous caravanserai,
This inn is managed by an elderly woman named Zara. Her silver hair is wrapped neatly beneath a linen scarf, and although age has slowed her steps, her sharp eyes miss very little. For nearly 40 years she has welcomed strangers through these gates. She remembers droughts that lasted entire seasons. She remembers unusually heavy snowfall in distant mountain passes. She remembers famous scholars, humble shepherds, wealthy merchants, wandering musicians, and children who returned years later as adults leading caravans of their own. The Silk Road has become the story of her life. Zara greets Rashid warmly. "You've arrived a little later than usual." Rashid laughs softly. "The wind argued with us all afternoon." She nods knowingly. The wind usually believes it is right. Several nearby travelers smile. It's a small joke, one that has probably been told here for many years. Inside the kitchen, preparations for supper are already underway. Copper pots hang over glowing fires. Fresh onions sizzle gently in fragrant oil. Steam rises from large kettles filled with barley soup. Bundles of mint and coriander lie neatly arranged beside wooden cutting boards. The smell drifting through the courtyard is almost impossible to ignore. Several younger travelers glance toward the kitchen with obvious anticipation. They are hungry, very hungry. The cooks understand. Long journeys create healthy appetites. Soon, long wooden tables begin filling with simple but nourishing food. Fresh bread, barley soup, roasted vegetables, goat cheese, bowls of olives gathered from distant groves, small dishes of honey collected from mountain villages, a handful of pistachios passed carefully from one guest to another. No one complains about the simplicity. Quite the opposite. Meals taste different after difficult journeys. Every bite carries a quiet gratitude. As darkness settles over the desert, conversation begins flowing naturally around the tables. A merchant from Samarkand describes colorful spring festivals held in his hometown. A young scholar shares news of a newly translated manuscript discovered in a monastery. Two shepherds compare the different breeds of sheep raised across the distant valleys they have visited. Nearby, an elderly musician quietly tunes a small stringed instrument. Without announcing himself, he begins to play. The melody is slow, gentle, melancholy, yet comforting. No one stops eating. No one applauds. The music simply becomes part of the evening itself, floating softly beneath the lantern light like another familiar voice of the caravanserai. The apprentice notices something curious. People from many different lands sit together, yet arguments are surprisingly rare. He quietly asks Zara how that can be. She smiles before answering. The road teaches humility. She pours another cup of tea. When everyone has crossed the same desert, everyone understands the value of peace. The young man reflects upon those words. Perhaps she is right. The hardships of travel seem to smooth away many differences. When water is scarce, kindness becomes more valuable than pride. When the journey is long, cooperation becomes wiser than competition. As the evening grows quieter, several travelers gather around a small fire in the center of the courtyard. One begins telling the story of a legendary white camel said to have guided lost caravans through blinding sandstorms. Another laughs gently, insisting the tale grows more miraculous each year. An older merchant simply smiles. Maybe every good story deserves to grow a little. The group chuckles softly. No one argues about whether the legend is true. Some stories exist not because they happened exactly as told, but because they offer comfort to those who listen. Far above, the stars return once again. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens with breathtaking clarity. The desert, which seemed so harsh beneath the afternoon sun, now appears peaceful beyond the caravanserai. A cool breeze carries away the last warmth of the day. One by one, travelers finish their tea. Blankets are unfolded, lanterns are lowered. The courtyard slowly grows quiet. Before retiring for the night, Zara walks alone to the great wooden gate. She places one hand upon its weathered surface for just a moment. Tomorrow it will open again. Another caravan will arrive. Another collection of strangers will become neighbors for a single evening. Another chapter in the endless story of the Silk Road will quietly unfold beneath these ancient stones. And somewhere beyond the sleeping desert, unseen beneath the moonlit sky, countless footsteps are already making their...
The desert is quiet once again. Beyond the thick stone walls of Zara's caravanserai, the wind drifts gently across the dunes, smoothing away the footprints left by the day's travelers. It is one of the desert's oldest habits. Every night it quietly erases the evidence of those who passed before. Yet inside the inn, something remains. Not footprints, not wagon tracks, but stories. Unlike the shifting sand outside, stories have a curious way of surviving. They are carried from one village to another, from one generation to the next, often traveling much farther than the people who first told them. This evening, after supper has ended and the last bowls have been washed beside the well, the travelers gather around a small fire burning in the center of the courtyard. The flames dance gently, casting warm circles of light across the ancient stones. Above them stretches an endless sky filled with stars. No one has planned a gathering. No invitation has been spoken. It simply happens, as naturally as the setting of the sun. The youngest travelers sit closest to the fire. The oldest choose places where they can lean comfortably against the cool stone walls. Several camels rest quietly nearby, chewing their evening meal with patient, unhurried movements. Even the animals seem to enjoy the peaceful atmosphere. The first storyteller is not a merchant, nor a scholar. He is a shepherd from the western mountains. His clothing is simple, patched many times over the years, and his hands bear the roughness of a lifetime spent caring for sheep among rocky hills. His voice is calm and steady. He begins speaking about a valley where wild almond trees bloom every spring, turning the hillsides white and pale pink beneath the morning sun. He describes clear streams flowing through fields of tall grass, small stone cottages with roofs of cedar wood, children chasing lambs through orchards. As he speaks, the travelers can almost picture the valley before them. Many have never seen such a place. Some have spent their entire lives crossing deserts. For a little while, the shepherd carries them somewhere else. When his story ends, no one rushes to speak. There is a comfortable silence, the kind that follows a story well told. Then a woman from the city of Bukhara begins her own tale. She once worked in her family's dye workshop, where cloth was colored using crushed flowers, tree bark, minerals, and rare insects gathered from distant lands. She describes great vats of steaming water, glowing with brilliant shades of crimson, sapphire blue, deep emerald green, and rich golden yellow. She explains that every village has its own secret methods. Some recipes are passed only from mother to daughter. Others remain known only to a single family for generations. As the fire crackles softly, the travelers listen with quiet fascination. The apprentice realizes something important. None of these people are simply telling stories. They are preserving knowledge. Every conversation contains lessons: how to recognize approaching storms, where to find sweet water during dry seasons, which mountain pass remains safest during winter, how to calm a frightened camel, how to repair torn leather using simple tools. Long before printed guidebooks existed, knowledge traveled through conversations exactly like these. One evening at a caravanserai might teach a traveler enough to save his life months later. Nearby sits an elderly physician named Hakim Yusuf. His leather satchel contains dozens of carefully wrapped herbs collected over many decades. Dried mint, licorice root, wild thyme, chamomile flowers, saffron, rose petals. Each bundle carries its own fragrance. When asked how he learned so much, Yusuf smiles thoughtfully. I listened, nothing more. I listened to healers in Persia. I listened to monks beyond the mountains. I listened to shepherds who knew every plant growing upon their hills. The road has many teachers. His answer seems almost too simple, yet everyone understands its truth. Wisdom often begins with quiet listening. Across the courtyard, the old musician who played during supper gently tunes his instrument once more. Tonight, however, he does something unusual. Instead of playing immediately, he tells the history of the melody. His grandfather first learned it from a traveler arriving from distant China. Years later, another musician added new notes inspired by Persian songs. Still later, a wandering poet composed different verses while passing through Samarkand. The melody slowly changed as it crossed continents, just like the travelers themselves. When he finally begins playing, the music sounds strangely familiar and wonderfully foreign at the same time. Perhaps that is the very spirit of the Silk Road. Cultures meeting without losing themselves, ideas blending without disappearing. The fire burns lower. Someone quietly adds another piece of wood. Tiny sparks rise into the cool night air before fading among the stars. One of the youngest children asks Zara a question. Have you ever wanted to leave this place? The old innkeeper thinks for a long moment before answering. I have traveled farther than you imagine. The child looks surprised. But you have lived here your whole life. Zara smiles. Yes. She gestures gently toward the travelers surrounding the fire. But every evening, the world comes to visit me. The courtyard grows wonderfully still. No one speaks. The answer is perfect. Without ever leaving her caravanserai, Zara has met merchants from China, sailors from the Persian Gulf, scholars from India, pilgrims from distant kingdoms, craftsmen from forgotten cities, and shepherds from lonely mountain valleys. The Silk Road has carried the world directly to her doorstep. Later in the evening, Rashid unfolds a weathered map upon one of the wooden tables. Its edges are worn soft from years of careful use. Several younger travelers gather around. Instead of pointing towards famous cities, Rashid traces a finger along forgotten places. Small wells, hidden springs, ancient watchtowers, ruined caravanserais now half buried beneath drifting sand. These places rarely appear in history books, he says quietly, but without them, the great cities could never have flourished. His words linger in the silence. History often remembers emperors. It remembers battles. It remembers magnificent palaces. Yet ordinary places like these quiet roadside inns made extraordinary journeys possible. The apprentice studies the faded map carefully. Many names have almost disappeared. Others belong to towns that no longer exist. Time changes roads just as rivers change their course. Trade routes shift, kingdoms rise and fall, buildings crumble, but the desire to explore, to learn, and to meet distant people remains remarkably constant. As midnight approaches, the fire becomes little more than glowing embers. Travelers begin returning to their rooms one by one. Blankets are unfolded. Oil lamps are lit briefly before being gently extinguished. The courtyard slowly empties. Only Rashid remains beside the dying fire. He looks upward at the stars that have guided him through deserts for nearly 30 decades. Soon, he knows, his journeys will become fewer. Younger guides will take his place. New caravans will follow familiar roads. The bells of different camels will echo across the same deserts. The road does not belong to any one generation. It simply welcomes whoever is willing to walk it. A cool breeze moves softly through the courtyard. Somewhere beyond the walls, a desert owl calls into the darkness. The sound fades almost as quickly as it appeared. Rashid closes his eyes for a moment. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise, another road, another forgotten inn waiting patiently beyond the horizon. And perhaps, around another quiet evening fire, another story will begin its own long journey, traveling from one traveler to another, crossing mountains, deserts, and centuries, until someone, somewhere, remembers it once again.
When many people imagine the Silk Road, they picture endless deserts glowing beneath a burning sun. They imagine golden dunes stretching beyond the horizon, long caravans moving through clouds of dust, and camels walking patiently beneath a sky without a single cloud. Those scenes certainly belonged to the Silk Road, but they were only part of its story. For the road did not cross one landscape alone. It climbed snow-covered mountains where the air grew so thin that every breath demanded effort. It followed frozen rivers that remained locked beneath ice for months. It wound through high valleys where winter arrived early and departed reluctantly. For travelers, winter transformed everything. One crisp morning, several weeks after leaving Zara's caravanserai, Rashid's caravan reaches the foothills of a great mountain range. The desert lies behind them now. Ahead, the landscape rises steadily toward distant peaks painted white with fresh snow. The air feels different, cooler, sharper. The scent of dry sand has disappeared, replaced by the clean fragrance of pine forests and cold stone. The travelers pause beside a narrow stream. Its water is so clear that smooth pebbles resting upon the bottom appear almost close enough to touch. Several of the younger merchants kneel to fill their water skins. One laughs softly. "This water tastes colder than the wind." Rashid smiles. "Wait until tomorrow." The caravan begins climbing. The road grows narrower with every mile. The broad open plains give way to winding paths carved into the mountainside centuries earlier. Stone retaining walls support sections of the trail where steep cliffs fall away into quiet valleys below. Some portions are barely wide enough for two camels to pass one another. Everyone walks more carefully now. No one hurries. The mountains reward patience even more generously than the desert. Above the tree line, the wind becomes stronger. It carries tiny flakes of snow that sparkle in the afternoon sunlight. At first, the travelers welcome the change. After weeks beneath the desert sun, the cool air feels refreshing. But experienced guides know how quickly mountain weather can change. Clouds gather without warning. Clear skies disappear within minutes. A gentle snowfall may become a fierce blizzard before anyone has time to prepare. Late that afternoon, Rashid notices dark clouds drifting across the highest peaks. He studies them quietly. The apprentice recognizes the familiar expression. The guide has seen something important. "We stop early today," Rashid announces. No one questions the decision. Trust has grown naturally over the weeks they have traveled together. The caravan soon reaches a small mountain caravanserai built entirely from rough gray stone. Unlike the desert inns, this one appears compact and sturdy. Its walls are thicker, its windows smaller. Its roof slopes sharply so heavy snow can slide away during winter storms. Smoke rises steadily from two chimneys. The sight brings immediate comfort. Inside, the atmosphere feels wonderfully warm. Large fireplaces burn throughout the building. The scent of burning cedar fills the air. Heavy wool blankets are stacked neatly beside the guest rooms. Even the stable has been designed with winter in mind, allowing the animals to remain sheltered from icy winds throughout the night. In the kitchen, enormous iron pots hang over roaring fires. Tonight's meal is heartier than those served on the open plains. Thick barley stew filled with root vegetables, fresh bread baked from coarse mountain grain, roasted chestnuts gathered from nearby forests, hot herbal tea flavored with wild mountain thyme. The air is filled with scents of heartiness and welcome. As darkness falls, snow begins drifting gently outside. At first, only a few flakes float past the windows. Soon they become many. The courtyard gradually disappears beneath a soft white blanket. Several younger travelers stand near the doorway, watching silently. Many have never seen snow before. One reaches out to catch a snowflake on his glove. It melts almost instantly. He laughs quietly. "So beautiful," he whispers. Timur overhears him. "Beautiful, yes." He glances toward the dark mountains, but always deserving of respect. Later that evening, Rashid joins Timur beside the fireplace. The flames crackle softly while the wind hums beyond the thick stone walls. The apprentice sits nearby, pretending to organize supplies while secretly listening. "How many winters have you spent here?" Rashid asked. Timur thinks carefully. 42. "And have the mountains changed?" Timur smiles. "No." He stirs the glowing embers with an iron poker. "But the people always do." He explains that each winter brings different travelers. Some are cheerful, others arrive frightened after difficult crossings. Some have never seen snow before, others know every mountain path by memory. Yet every one of them steps through the same wooden door, hoping for exactly the same thing: warmth, food, safety, rest. Outside, the snowfall grows heavier. The watchman makes one final inspection before securing the gates for the night. His boots leave deep prints across the fresh snow. By morning, many of those prints will have disappeared beneath another layer. Winter has its own quiet way of covering yesterday. Inside, the travelers gather closer to the fire. Someone begins knitting a thick wool scarf. Another carefully repairs a pair of worn leather boots. A physician mixes herbs into warm water to soothe aching muscles after the long climb. The atmosphere is peaceful. No one feels the need to speak constantly. Sometimes silence is the greatest comfort. The apprentice notices a collection of carved wooden plaques hanging over the fireplace. Each bears a different year. Timur explains that whenever a particularly difficult winter passes without losing a single traveler, his family carves another plaque and places it on the wall. There are many plaques now. The apprentice studies them with admiration. None celebrate wealth. None commemorate victories in battle. Instead, they honor something much quieter: lives safely protected. As the evening grows later, the storm outside reaches its full strength. Snow strikes the shutters in soft waves. The wind whistles through the mountain pass. Yet inside the caravanserai, the fire burns steadily. Its warm orange glow fills every corner of the room. Blankets grow heavier. Eyes become sleepy. Conversations fade. One by one, the travelers retire to their rooms. Before sleeping, Rashid steps outside for just a moment. The snowfall has eased. The mountains stand silent beneath the moonlight, their white peaks glowing softly against the night sky. Everything feels perfectly still. He takes one slow breath of the icy air before returning indoors. Tomorrow, the road will continue climbing higher. New valleys await beyond the pass. New caravanserais stand patiently among distant mountains. And somewhere beyond those snowy peaks, Another forgotten inn has already lit its lanterns, ready to welcome whoever may arrive before another winter night settles over the ancient Silk Road.
Morning arrives quietly in the high mountains. Unlike the bright sunrises of the desert, dawn here comes slowly. The first light touches only the highest peaks, turning them shades of pale gold, while the valleys below remain wrapped in cool blue shadows. Frost clings to every stone. Thin ribbons of mist drift lazily above the frozen streams, and the snow that fell during the night sparkles like thousands of tiny crystals beneath the growing light. Inside Timur's caravanserai, the travelers are already awake. The fireplaces still glow softly, having burned through the night. Warm bread rests upon wooden tables, and the comforting smell of barley porridge fills the great hall. Outside, stable hands gently brush fresh snow from the backs of the camels before fastening their saddles once more. The animals seem quieter this morning. Even they understand that mountain travel demands patience. Before the caravan departs, Timur gathers everyone near the entrance. He points toward the narrow valley stretching beyond the inn. "The pass ahead is safe today," he says in his calm, steady voice. "But remember, mountains have their own way of measuring time. Do not race them." The travelers nod. No one doubts his advice. For generations, families like Timur's have watched the changing seasons from these mountains. They know the moods of the wind, the meaning of unusual clouds, and the sounds that sometimes warn of falling rocks or distant avalanches. Knowledge here is earned slowly, one winter at a time. The heavy gates swing open. The caravan steps quietly into the crisp morning air. Fresh snow crunches beneath boots and hooves. The familiar bells hanging from the camels sound softer than usual, their gentle rhythm muffled by the blanket of snow covering the landscape. The apprentice pauses for a moment. He turns to look back at the caravanserai. Smoke rises peacefully from its chimneys. Warm light glows faintly through its small windows. Already it seems like a distant memory. Yet he knows that by evening another group of weary travelers will stand where he is standing now, feeling exactly the same sense of gratitude. The mountain path climbs steadily upward. Tall pine trees line much of the route, their branches heavy with snow. Occasionally a gust of wind shakes loose a shower of white crystals that drift silently toward the ground. Birds are few here. Only the occasional raven circles overhead, its dark wings standing out against the brilliant white mountainside. Several hours pass. The caravan speaks very little. The climb requires careful attention. Each step must be placed wisely upon the narrow trail. One careless movement could send loose stones tumbling into the valley far below. Around midday, the travelers reach the highest point of the pass. Here, the wind blows freely across the open ridge. Prayer flags left by travelers many years ago flutter gently between weathered wooden poles. Their colors have faded beneath countless winters, yet they continue dancing in the mountain breeze. Some travelers pause briefly. Not everyone shares the same beliefs. Some whisper prayers, others simply stand quietly, admiring the breathtaking view. Below them stretches an astonishing panorama. Snow-covered peaks roll endlessly toward the horizon. Hidden valleys disappear into soft clouds. Tiny rivers shine like silver threads far beneath the cliffs. The apprentice has never seen anything so beautiful. Rashid notices the young man's expression. "The mountains remind us how small we are," he says softly, "but they also remind us how far people are willing to travel." The apprentice nods. He understands. Somewhere beyond these mountains lie great cities he has only heard about in stories. Libraries filled with thousands of books, bustling markets where dozens of languages are spoken, gardens surrounded by flowing canals. The road connects them all. As the caravan begins descending the eastern side of the pass, they encounter another group of travelers moving in the opposite direction. Such meetings are always special. In many places along the Silk Road, days may pass without seeing another soul. Yet here, upon this narrow mountain path, two worlds briefly meet. The approaching caravan is smaller, only 8 camels, several sturdy mountain ponies, a handful of merchants wrapped in thick wool cloaks. The two caravan leaders greet each other warmly. Neither seems surprised. The Silk Road often creates friendships that last many years, despite the vast distances separating them. They exchange news. How are the roads beyond Samarkand? Dry but safe. And the western passes? Snowy, though still open. Any sign of bandits? None this season. The conversation lasts only a few minutes, yet those few minutes contain information more valuable than many expensive goods. Road conditions, weather, water sources, political changes. Every detail helps future travelers prepare wisely. Before continuing, one elderly merchant from the western caravan reaches into his bag. He removes a small packet wrapped carefully in cloth. Inside are dried apples from an orchard hundreds of miles away. He offers them to Rashid. In return, Rashid presents a handful of fragrant tea leaves carried from the east. Neither considers it a business transaction. It is simply hospitality between fellow travelers. The caravans continue in opposite directions. Soon they disappear around separate bends in the mountain road. Perhaps they will never meet again. Perhaps they will cross paths years later at another forgotten inn. The Silk Road has a quiet habit of surprising those who travel it. By late afternoon, the snow begins thinning. The mountains gradually soften into rolling hills covered with hardy grasses and scattered juniper trees. The air grows warmer. Small villages appear occasionally in the distance, their stone houses nestled beside clear streams. Children wave as the caravan passes. Shepherds pause briefly from watching their flocks to greet the travelers with friendly smiles. Not every village has a caravanserai. Some are simply too small. Yet many families gladly offer water or directions to passing caravans. Helping strangers has become part of life along these ancient roads. As evening approaches, Rashid notices something familiar rising above a grove of tall poplar trees. A square watchtower, stone walls, a faint trail of smoke curling peacefully into the evening sky. Another caravanserai. This one is different from Timur's mountain inn. Its walls are built from pale limestone. A small garden grows beside the entrance, where hardy herbs continue thriving despite the cool weather. An old apricot tree stretches its bare branches toward the sky, waiting patiently for spring. The apprentice smiles. No matter how different each caravanserai appears, every one offers the same comforting promise: a safe place, a warm meal, a quiet night's sleep. As the gates slowly open, the scent of fresh soup drifts through the cool evening air. Lanterns glow beneath the covered walkways. Someone inside is laughing softly. A dog lazily lifts its head before deciding the newcomers pose no danger. The travelers enter one by one. Their footsteps echo gently across the familiar stone courtyard. Another day upon the Silk Road has come to its peaceful end. Another forgotten inn prepares to gather strangers from distant lands beneath one welcoming roof. And as the first stars begin appearing above the mountains once more, the ancient road continues its timeless rhythm, linking kingdoms, carrying dreams, and quietly reminding every traveler that no journey, however long, is never made entirely alone.
As evening settles gently over the hills, the travelers enter yet another caravanserai. Unlike the lonely inns scattered across the desert or the sturdy shelters hidden among snow-covered mountain passes, this one stands just outside the walls of a great trading city. Even before the gates close behind the caravan, everyone can sense that the atmosphere is different. The air carries new scents: freshly baked bread, roasted almonds, wood smoke drifting from hundreds of chimneys. Somewhere nearby, sweet incense floats upon the evening breeze. Beyond the city walls comes another sound that has been absent for many days: the gentle murmur of countless people. Not loud enough to disturb the peaceful evening, only a distant reminder that life continues beyond the quiet courtyard. For travelers who have spent weeks crossing empty landscapes, the sound is strangely comforting. The caravanserai itself is larger than many the travelers have visited before. Its walls surround an enormous courtyard paved with smooth stone, polished by generations of footsteps. 2 wells stand near the center. Long wooden galleries run along the upper floor, where rows of simple guest rooms overlook the courtyard below. At one corner stands a small stable capable of sheltering more than 100 camels. Near another corner rises a modest bathhouse where weary travelers may finally wash away weeks of dust gathered from the road. The apprentice looks around with quiet amazement. "So many people," he whispers. Indeed, the courtyard is already alive with activity. A caravan from India has arrived earlier in the afternoon. Their wagons carry sacks of black pepper, cardamom, indigo, and fine cotton cloth. Nearby rests another caravan from the western lands, transporting beautiful glass lamps, silver bowls, and carefully crafted leather goods. Several local traders have also gathered here, hoping to arrange tomorrow's business before the city markets open at sunrise. The Silk Road is often imagined as a single road, yet places like this reveal its true nature. Here, countless roads come together. Each one brings different languages, different customs, different dreams. The innkeeper, a cheerful man named Hamid, greets Rashid with genuine warmth. They have known one another for nearly 20 years. Their friendship requires few words: a smile, a firm handshake, a quiet question about the journey. That is enough. Hamid's family has managed this caravanserai for 3 generations. His grandfather welcomed caravans when the city was much smaller. His father witnessed new walls being built around expanding neighborhoods. Now Hamid watches merchants arrive from places his grandfather could scarcely have imagined. Each generation believes it has seen the busiest years. Each generation is eventually proven wrong. After settling the animals, the travelers wander slowly through the courtyard. Unlike the isolated inns of the desert, this caravanserai feels almost like a small village. A blacksmith repairs broken horseshoes beside a glowing forge. The rhythmic ringing of his hammer echoes pleasantly against the stone walls. Nearby, a calligrapher carefully copies business contracts for merchants unable to write in every language used along the Silk Road. His elegant handwriting flows across parchment with remarkable precision. A tailor measures a traveler for a new winter cloak. Several children carry baskets filled with figs and fresh bread, delivering evening meals to elderly guests unable to leave their rooms. Everywhere, quiet work continues, not hurried, not chaotic, simply steady. Near the entrance sits an elderly money changer behind a polished wooden table. Before the invention of modern banking, merchants often carried coins from dozens of kingdoms: Chinese bronze coins, Persian silver, Byzantine gold, copper pieces from distant cities. Each kingdom minted its own designs. The money changer examines every coin carefully: its weight, its shape, its markings. Years of experience allow him to recognize genuine currency almost instantly. The apprentice watches with fascination. How does he remember them all? Rashid smiles. Practice. Then he adds thoughtfully, and patience. As darkness falls, lanterns illuminate every corner of the courtyard. Unlike the lonely desert caravanserais, where only a handful of lights burned after sunset, this place glows warmly from dozens of windows. The atmosphere remains peaceful despite the greater number of guests. Travelers have learned to respect one another's need for rest. Tomorrow promises another busy day. Inside the dining hall, long wooden tables fill gradually. Tonight's meal reflects the city's remarkable diversity. There is fragrant rice cooked with raisins, lamb seasoned with mountain herbs, vegetable stews rich with lentils, fresh yogurt cooled in clay jars, flatbread still warm from the oven, bowls of pomegranates, grapes, and ripe pears gathered from nearby orchards. Small dishes of honey glisten beneath the lantern light. Several travelers quietly remark that they have not eaten so well in many weeks. At Rashid's table, conversation turns toward tomorrow's market. One merchant hopes to sell silk woven in distant Eastern workshops. Another searches for fine steel blades crafted by local smiths. A physician wishes to purchase rare medicinal herbs unavailable in his homeland. The apprentice listens carefully. Tomorrow will be his first visit to one of the great Silk Road cities. He has imagined such places since childhood. Tonight, excitement quietly replaces fatigue. After supper, many guests remain in the courtyard rather than retiring immediately. Some write letters home. Others count their coins beneath the steady lantern light. Several scholars compare handwritten manuscripts while discussing mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. One elderly astronomer unfolds a carefully drawn star chart. The apprentice watches with fascination. The stars guiding travelers across deserts are the same stars studied by scholars in great cities. Knowledge, like trade, follows many roads. Not far away, a bookseller carefully unwraps several manuscripts from protective cloth. The pages have been copied by hand with extraordinary care. Some contain poetry, others preserve histories of forgotten kingdoms. One volume describes medicinal plants growing in distant mountain valleys. Another explains new methods of calculating distances using the movements of the stars. The bookseller smiles gently. Books are unusual travelers. A nearby merchant looks curious. How so? The old man closes one of the manuscripts carefully. They often arrive before the people who wrote them. Several listeners nod thoughtfully. Ideas truly do travel farther than their creators. Later, Hamid leads Rashid to the rooftop overlooking the sleeping city. From there, they can see countless lanterns glowing beyond the walls. The streets below appear peaceful. Occasionally, the distant sound of laughter drifts upward. Elsewhere, a dog barks once before settling again. The night air is cool and wonderfully still. Hamid pours 2 small cups of warm tea. "Do you ever think about stopping?" he asks. Rashid gazes toward the distant road disappearing into darkness. "Sometimes." "Then and?" The old guide smiles quietly. Then another sunrise comes. Hamid laughs softly. "I understand." Neither man speaks for several minutes. They simply watch the lanterns flickering across the rooftops. Both know that countless travelers have stood exactly here over many centuries, looking toward the same roads and wondering what tomorrow's journey might bring. Below them, the caravanserai grows steadily quieter. Lanterns are extinguished one by one. The stables become silent except for the gentle breathing of resting animals. The kitchen fires burn lower. The last conversations fade into whispers. Beyond the city walls, ancient roads stretch toward deserts, forests, rivers, and mountains, patiently waiting for another dawn. Tomorrow, the markets will open. Goods from distant kingdoms will change hands. New friendships will begin. Fresh stories will be exchanged. But tonight, beneath a sky filled with familiar stars, the forgotten inn outside the city walls offers exactly what it has always offered. A place where every traveler...
Before the first rays of sunlight reach the rooftops of the great trading city, the caravanserai is already awake. The courtyard that rested peacefully beneath the stars only a few hours earlier now fills once again with quiet movement. Stable hands carry fresh buckets of water. Bakers remove steaming loaves from clay ovens. Merchants carefully tighten ropes around valuable cargo, while scribes sharpen their reed pens in preparation for another busy day. The gates of the city have not yet opened. Still, everyone knows they soon will. For many travelers, today is the reason they have crossed deserts, climbed mountains, and endured weeks or even months upon the road. Today is market day. The apprentice can barely hide his excitement. He has heard stories about the Great Silk Road markets since he was a child. His father once described them as places where every language under the sun could be heard before lunchtime. At the time, the boy believed such tales were exaggerations. Now he is about to discover that the truth is perhaps even more remarkable. As dawn breaks, the city gates slowly swing open. A steady stream of people begins flowing through them. Farmers arrive first, leading donkeys carrying baskets of vegetables freshly gathered from nearby fields. Then come shepherds with wool and cheese, potters balancing carefully wrapped ceramics, fishermen carrying salted fish packed in wooden barrels, artisans pushing small carts filled with tools, woven baskets, carved wooden toys, and polished copper lamps. Soon afterward, the caravans begin entering. The streets remain surprisingly calm. There was no rushing, no shouting. People have followed these routines for generations. Everyone understands their place. The city itself is magnificent. Its streets are paved with worn stone, polished smooth by countless footsteps. Narrow lanes branch away from broad avenues, leading toward workshops, homes, gardens, bathhouses, libraries, and places of worship. Wooden balconies decorated with flowering vines lean gently over shaded streets. Small fountains provide cool drinking water. The apprentice notices birds nesting beneath roof tiles, while cats quietly patrol the alleyways in search of mice. The city feels wonderfully alive, yet nothing seems hurried. As the travelers approach the central marketplace, new sounds slowly surround them. The soft ringing of metal being shaped by blacksmiths, the steady rhythm of weavers working enormous wooden looms, the laughter of children helping their parents arrange baskets of fruit, the gentle calls of merchants greeting familiar customers. Unlike many modern markets filled with constant noise, this one possesses a comfortable rhythm. Busy, but never overwhelming. The marketplace itself occupies a vast open square surrounded by covered arcades. Color seems to exist everywhere. Brilliant rolls of Chinese silk shimmer in shades of crimson, emerald, sapphire, and gold. Persian carpets display intricate patterns inspired by gardens, rivers, and stars. Indian cotton hangs beside embroidered robes from Central Asia. Glass vessels sparkle beneath the morning sunlight like captured drops of water. Nearby, jewelers arrange turquoise, jade, coral, pearls, and polished amber on dark velvet cloths. The apprentice stops walking. He simply stares. Rashid smiles. The road ends here for some people. He pauses before continuing. But for others, this is only another beginning. Throughout the marketplace, conversations take place in dozens of languages: Arabic, Persian, Chinese, Turkic dialects, Mongolian, Greek, Armenian, Hindi. Many merchants understand several languages well enough to conduct business.
Others rely on translators who move quietly through the marketplace, helping strangers understand one another. Translation is more than changing words. It is the careful building of trust. Nearby, an elderly calligrapher patiently writes contracts in elegant handwriting. His desk remains busy from sunrise until evening. Every agreement deserves clear words. Every promise deserves careful recording. Not all trading involves expensive treasures. One farmer exchanges several sacks of walnuts for iron farming tools. Another purchases salt harvested hundreds of miles away. A baker buys fragrant cinnamon that will flavor sweet pastries throughout the coming winter. An herbal healer searches patiently among baskets filled with dried flowers and roots gathered from distant mountains. Every transaction tells a small story. Every purchase continues another journey. The apprentice notices something curious. Many merchants spend nearly as much time as they do buying or selling. Some discuss weather conditions. Others ask about distant relatives. Several exchange news about roads, harvests, or political events. The marketplace functions almost like the beating heart of the Silk Road itself. Goods move here, but so do ideas. One corner of the square belongs almost entirely to books. Shelves display carefully copied manuscripts protected beneath linen cloth. Scholars examine them with extraordinary care. A physician studies a newly translated medical text from India. Nearby, an astronomer compares star charts copied from Chinese observations. Two mathematicians debate different methods of solving complex calculations. The apprentice watches in amazement. He had expected to find silk. He had expected spices. He had not expected knowledge to be traded with equal enthusiasm. An elderly calligrapher notices the young man's curiosity. He gently lifts a beautifully written manuscript. "This book," he says, "has traveled farther than many kings." The apprentice smiles. The bookseller continues. "It was written in one language, translated into another, copied by hand in a third city, and finally brought here by caravan." He carefully closes the manuscript. Every traveler adds another page to its journey. Not far away, musicians have gathered beneath a shaded awning. One plays a graceful melody on a lute. Another accompanies him with a reed flute. Children pause to listen. Several elderly travelers quietly tap their feet. The music itself reflects the Silk Road. Its melody carries echoes from many lands. No single culture owns it completely. It belongs to the journey. By midday, delicious aromas fill the marketplace. Vendors prepare warm flatbread upon heated stones. Rice simmers inside large copper pots. Skewers of lamb roast slowly above glowing charcoal. Fresh pomegranates are sliced open, revealing clusters of ruby-red seeds. Honey cakes dusted with crushed pistachios attract long lines of smiling customers. Rashid and the apprentice sit beneath the shade of an old plane tree. Their meal is simple: fresh bread, soft cheese, olives, sweet figs, warm tea served in small clay cups. As they eat, Rashid quietly observes the people passing before them. "What do you see?" he asks. The apprentice answers quickly, "I see merchants." Rashid smiles gently. "Look again." The young man studies the crowd more carefully. Now he notices things he had missed before. A father teaching his daughter how to judge the quality of wool. A grandmother choosing herbs for medicine. A young apprentice nervously completing his first sale. A traveler joyfully embracing an old friend not seen for many years. A scribe patiently helping someone write a letter home. "I understand now," the apprentice whispers. "This market is full of lives, not just goods." Rashid nods with quiet satisfaction. "Exactly." As afternoon slowly gives way to evening, merchants begin covering their stalls. Unsold goods are wrapped carefully in cloth. Coins are counted. Animals are prepared for tomorrow's journey. Some caravans will remain several more days. Others plan to depart before sunrise. The Silk Road never pauses for long. As the apprentice follows Rashid back toward the familiar caravanserai outside the city walls, he glances over his shoulder one last time. The marketplace glows softly beneath the golden light of the setting sun. Its sounds gradually fade behind them, yet he knows something important. The greatest treasure he found today was not silk, nor silver, nor precious scones. It was the realization that the Silk Road connected far more than cities. It connected people. And perhaps that quiet connection, built one conversation, one shared meal, and one welcoming inn at a time, was the most valuable cargo ever carried across the ancient world.
No road remains busy forever. For centuries, the Silk Road had been the heartbeat of continents. Day after day, season after season, caravans stretched across deserts, climbed frozen mountain passes, and crossed fertile valleys carrying not only goods, but also ideas, languages, music, and friendships. It seemed impossible that such a road could ever become quiet. Yet history often changes not with a single dramatic moment, but with countless small changes that happen almost unnoticed. The travelers living through those years did not wake one morning to discover the Silk Road had ended. Instead, they simply noticed that each season brought a few fewer caravans than the one before. At first, no one worried. Some blamed poor harvests. Others believed wars between distant kingdoms had temporarily slowed trade. A few thought unusually harsh winters had discouraged merchants from making the journey. Surely, they told themselves, everything would soon return to normal. But the seasons continued to pass. The roads remained a little quieter. The caravanserais waited a little longer between visitors. The old rhythm of the Silk Road was beginning to change. Far to the south, something remarkable was happening. Ships were becoming larger, stronger, more reliable. Experienced sailors learned to navigate vast oceans with increasing confidence. Sea routes that had once seemed too dangerous or uncertain gradually became practical alternatives to the long overland journeys. A cargo that once required many months to cross deserts and mountains could sometimes reach its destination by sea more efficiently. The change came slowly, almost gently. There was no great announcement, no final caravan, no official closing of the road. History rarely works that way. Instead, one merchant chose a ship. The next season, another followed. Then another. Little by little, the endless lines of camels grew shorter. Back at Zahra's caravanserai, the elderly innkeeper noticed the difference before anyone else. She had spent nearly 40 years watching travelers arrive beneath the evening sky. She knew the rhythm of the road as another person might know the rhythm of their own heartbeat. One autumn evening, she stood beside the familiar wooden gate just before sunset. Normally, by this hour, she would already hear the distant bells of approaching camels. Instead, only the wind. She listened carefully. Nothing. No rising cloud of dust, no faint voices carried across the desert. Only silence. She did not become frightened, only thoughtful. That evening, just one small caravan arrived. 8 camels, 3 merchants, a physician, 2 guards. Years earlier, 50 travelers might have filled her courtyard before nightfall. Now, many guest rooms remained empty. The lanterns still glowed warmly. The bread still baked in the ovens. The tea was prepared exactly as always. Hospitality had not changed.
only the number of guests. One young worker asked her quietly, "Do you think more travelers will come tomorrow?" Zahra smiled gently. "I hope so." She did not pretend certainty. Some questions have no easy answers. Across the Silk Road, similar conversations were taking place. Timur, high in the mountains, noticed that fewer caravans climbed the snowy passes each winter. The stable that once echoed with the breathing of dozens of horses now sheltered only a handful. His great fireplaces still burned every evening, yet more chairs remained empty around the flames. Hamid, outside the great trading city, saw merchants arriving with smaller cargoes. Some spoke excitedly about strange new ships capable of carrying enormous amounts of silk, porcelain, spices, and tea across distant seas. Others admitted they had begun investing in ports instead of caravan routes. The old road was not disappearing overnight. It was slowly sharing its role with the oceans. Rashid, now growing older himself, continued leading caravans whenever work remained. His beard had become almost completely white. The apprentice who once walked beside him was no longer a boy. Years of travel had transformed him into an experienced guide. One evening, while resting beside a familiar fire, the younger guide asked him, "Do you miss the old days?" Rashid looked thoughtfully toward the stars. "I miss the people." He smiled softly, "But every generation has its own road." The younger guide remained silent. He understood. The purpose of the journey had never truly been the road itself. It had always been the people walking upon it. One spring morning, Rashid decided to revisit one of the earliest caravanserais where he had stayed as a young traveler. The journey took several days. When he finally reached the familiar valley, he slowed his horse. The old stone walls still stood. The watchtower remained. The great wooden gate leaned slightly with age. But no smoke rose from the chimney. The courtyard was silent. Grass had begun growing between the worn paving stones. A swallow flew through an empty window before disappearing into the blue sky. Rashid dismounted quietly. He pushed gently against the gate. It opened with a slow, familiar creak. Inside, everything seemed frozen in time. The well still held cool water. Several feeding troughs remained beside the stable. An old clay oven rested peacefully beneath its shelter, as though waiting for someone to light another fire. He walked slowly across the courtyard. Each step awakened another memory. Here an old musician had once played beneath the lanterns. Near the well, merchants from distant kingdoms had shared tea. Beside the stable, a young apprentice had learned how to care for tired camels. Nothing had truly vanished, only the voices were missing. Rashid sat beside the dry fountain at the center of the courtyard. For a long while, he simply listened. The silence felt different now, not lonely, not sad, peaceful. The building had completed its purpose. For hundreds of years, it had protected strangers. It had offered warmth during winter storms, cool shade beneath summer suns, fresh water after endless days in the desert, safe sleep beneath unfamiliar skies. Perhaps that was enough. Perhaps every building hopes for such a meaningful life. Before leaving, Rashid noticed something lying beneath a loose stone near the entrance. It was a small bronze camel bell. Time had darkened its surface with a soft green patina. He picked it up carefully. When he gently shook it, the tiny bell still produced a delicate sound. Cling! The same gentle note that had once echoed across deserts filled with caravans. He smiled. Instead of taking it with him, he placed it back exactly where he had found it. Some memories belong to the places that created them. As the sun slowly began to setting behind the distant hills, Rashid mounted his horse one final time. He looked back only once. The forgotten caravanserai glowed softly beneath the golden evening light. Its empty courtyard seemed almost alive with invisible memories. If one listened carefully enough, perhaps it was still possible to imagine the laughter of travelers, the quiet conversations shared over warm bread, the gentle music floating beneath the stars, and the steady rhythm of camel bells disappearing slowly toward another welcoming inn beyond the horizon. The Silk Road had grown quieter, but its story had never truly ended. It simply settled into history, waiting patiently for future generations to remember the forgotten inns that had once welcomed the world.